In a room packed with cameras, flashing lights, and the low hum of whispered conversations, Kash Patel leaned forward, his finger stabbing the air like a dagger aimed at truth itself. "You're twisting the law, Congresswoman Crockett," he shouted, voice echoing against the polished marble walls, sharp enough to make pens drop and papers flutter. The words cut through the tense silence like a thunderclap, leaving the room suspended in disbelief. Every journalist, every aide, every observer felt it, the kind of moment that doesn't just get reported. It lives in memory. Jasmine Crockett sat poised, her hands folded lightly on the podium, eyes locked on Patel with a calm that seemed almost unreal. The room waited. Cameras zoomed, microphones strained, and the ambient chatter evaporated into an expectant hush. Patel's accusation wasn't subtle, it was a public challenge. A declaration meant to provoke, to unsettle, to make her flinch. But Crockett didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She didn't even exhale more quickly than normal. The tension wasn't just in the air. It was in every heartbeat of everyone watching, every soul holding its breath. "Twisting the law," Patel repeated, his voice rising like a storm gathering over a city skyline. He leaned even closer, voice dripping with condescension, as though the very fabric of justice needed correcting by his own hands. Around him, aides shifted nervously, the clatter of notepads betraying their anxiety. Journalists scribbled frantically, some caught between disbelief and the irresistible pull of the unfolding drama. Social media, already buzzing with anticipation, was about to erupt. A single tweet could spiral into a national firestorm. And then, almost imperceptibly, Crockett's lips curved in a measured, knowing smile. Not arrogance, not mockery. It was the calm of someone who had anticipated this moment, who had seen storms like this before, and knew exactly how to turn them to her advantage. The silence stretched. Seconds felt like hours. The world seemed to pause. In a room full of journalists, one question would change everything. An onlooker murmured, barely audibly, and as Patel's chest heaved with the force of his accusation, the room sensed it. This was not the end of the story. The next words, the next move, would be unlike anything anyone had expected. And in that stillness, every eye, every camera, every heart leaned in, waiting for the moment that would define the narrative for days, weeks, perhaps even years. The question hung in the air like a spark over gasoline. Everyone knew something monumental was coming, and when she finally spoke, the world would be forced to listen. The accusation wasn't just another political jab. It was a direct challenge to the integrity of the legal system itself. Kash Patel had leveled his words with precision, claiming that Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett had manipulated the law for political gain, twisting statutes and precedents to suit her agenda. In a nation already fractured by partisan battles, where every courtroom decision could become a headline, and every hearing a referendum on trust, his claim carried weight. Every word Patel spoke threatened to erode the fragile faith that Americans, especially those who believed in fairness and justice, placed in their institutions. The room wasn't merely observing a confrontation between two politicians. It was witnessing the collision of ideals. On one side, Patel, representing the relentless accusatory machine of political theater, wielding his platform like a sword aimed at credibility itself. On the other, Crockett, a figure defined by her calm, precise reasoning and her dedication to justice, faced the storm with unwavering composure. Every eye in the chamber, every camera lens, and every recording device captured the tension, knowing that this exchange had consequences far beyond the walls of that hearing room. Outside the room, social media feeds had already ignited. Clips of Patel's sharp accusation were trending before the gavel even dropped. Commentators debated endlessly, some dismissing him as performative, others questioning Crockett's record. Analysts dissected every syllable, every gesture, and every pause, searching for a hint of weakness or proof of guilt. The stakes weren't just political, they were existential for public trust. For communities who looked to leaders to uphold fairness, this moment carried a personal weight. Immigrant families, activists, students, everyday citizens whose lives depended on a justice system that could be relied upon, felt the tension viscerally. And yet, amidst the swelling storm of accusations, one truth remained. Crockett had the rare ability to turn pressure into clarity. Her reputation wasn't built on theatrics. It was built on precision, empathy, and an unshakable moral compass. The accusation, though forceful and loud, was predictable in its strategy, almost formulaic. She had prepared for moments like this countless times, navigating challenges where facts were twisted, motives misrepresented, and opponents weaponized perception against truth. Patel's words, while loud, were brittle under scrutiny. They thrived in the air of speculation and half-truths, but Crockett's response, if history was any guide, would do more than rebut them. It would redefine the narrative entirely. Every person in that room sensed it, even if they didn't yet understand how. There was a subtle electricity in the air, the kind that makes journalists lean forward, that makes social media pulse with anticipation, that makes ordinary citizens pause their scrolling to catch every word. This moment was about more than a single accusation. It was about the stakes for democracy itself. Could truth hold in the face of spectacle? Could integrity withstand the weight of public doubt? Could a single voice, calm yet resolute, reshape the discourse in a country teetering between cynicism and hope? All eyes were on Crockett, and all hearts were silently asking the same question. How would she respond? But little did Patel know. Crockett's calm was a storm waiting to strike. Kash Patel had cultivated a public image that was as polished as it was aggressive. To his supporters, he was the relentless truth seeker, the fearless watchdog challenging the establishment, the man who dared to speak when others hesitated. But beneath the surface of that carefully crafted persona lay a pattern that repeated itself in every high-stakes encounter, a penchant for spectacle over substance, for outrage over reason, and for intimidation over dialogue. Patel thrived in moments where conflict could be framed as performance, where headlines and sound bites mattered more than context or nuance. Throughout his career, Patel had been a master of turning small controversies into national crises. A misquoted statement here, a selective fact there, and suddenly an entire narrative could be rewritten to suit his agenda. He had a knack for exploiting fear, highlighting perceived threats and framing himself as the lone guardian against a system he painted as corrupt. His critics, however, pointed to a troubling tendency to oversimplify complex issues, to bend the narrative until it fit the story he wanted to tell, even when the truth lay elsewhere. And yet the public, hungry for drama and clear-cut heroes and villains, often overlooked the subtle manipulations in favor of the spectacle he delivered. He believed the courtroom was his stage, that every gavel, every mic, every flash of the camera was a spotlight meant to showcase his prowess. The arrogance was palpable, almost theatrical. Those who encountered him in political arenas described a confidence that bordered on hubris, a certainty in his own interpretations that made him impervious to contradiction, until, of course, he faced someone capable of outmaneuvering his theatrics. His words carried weight not because of their factual accuracy, but because of the sheer force with which he delivered them. Each accusation was meticulously timed, each rhetorical flourish rehearsed, and each public appearance crafted to maximize impact. But Patel's public victories often came at a cost. There were moments where his aggressive style backfired, spectacularly missteps that his opponents seized upon, inconsistencies that contradicted his carefully maintained image, and misjudged attacks that left him exposed. In interviews, in hearings, in debates past, he had occasionally misread the room, mistaking bluster for authority and volume for credibility. And when those moments surfaced, they spread like wildfire across media outlets, fueling skepticism about his methods and intentions. It was a pattern familiar to those who watched closely. The louder he roared, the more fragile the foundation beneath him often became. Cinematically, Patel could be imagined in stark lighting, shadows falling across his face, emphasizing every calculated expression, every confident gesture. He moved as though the world was an audience waiting for his performance, yet every calculated motion masked the cracks beneath the overconfidence, the selective truths, the reliance on theatrics over reason. Each accusation was a prelude, each public statement a setup, and each controversial claim a test of whether the audience would notice the gaps between performance and substance. And yet, even with all this preparation and bravado, there was one thing Patel had not accounted for: Crockett. Her reputation for precision, for calm under fire, for dismantling attacks not with anger but with logic and moral authority, was the antithesis of his style. Where he relied on spectacle, she relied on substance. Where he relied on volume, she relied on clarity. And that contrast, subtle yet unmistakable, was the source of growing anticipation among observers. Everyone watching could sense that Patel's performance-driven aggression, which had served him for years, might finally meet its match. His past controversies, once shrugged off or spun to his advantage, were now potential ammunition in the hands of someone who understood the law, understood optics, and understood the power of measured response. Every tweet he had fired in indignation, every sensationalized claim he had made, every theatrical confrontation he had staged, all of it loomed as a shadow waiting to be reflected back in a courtroom where substance mattered more than style. Patel, in his mind, was ready to dominate, ready to dictate the narrative, ready to humiliate anyone who dared challenge him. But the stage he thought he controlled was about to shift beneath his feet. The audience was tense, the cameras rolling, the nation watching, and the storm he had expected to unleash would instead be the very force that revealed his vulnerabilities. He believed he was the architect of the spectacle, but he had not met Crockett yet, and as the room braced for her response, a quiet, unassuming tension settled over the chamber, an invisible countdown to the moment where precision, dignity and truth would collide with arrogance, theatrics and misrepresentation. Every observer knew that history was about to decide which style would prevail, and that Patel, for all his experience and bravado, might be on the brink of unraveling in front of an audience he could not control. Jasmine Crockett's story didn't begin in a courtroom or a congressional chamber. It began in neighborhoods where voices like hers were often overlooked, where systems designed to protect often seemed to fail those who needed them most. She grew up witnessing the struggles of ordinary people, immigrant families working long hours, communities facing systemic injustice, and neighbors fighting quietly for opportunity and dignity. From a young age, Crockett understood that justice wasn't abstract. It was personal. It affected the lives of children like her cousins, neighbors like her mentors, and millions whose stories rarely made headlines. That understanding became the bedrock of her life's mission: to serve, to protect, and to elevate truth above spectacle. Her journey through law and politics was shaped by relentless determination. Crockett excelled academically, but she also encountered the barriers familiar to those who do not fit the mold of traditional power: subtle discrimination, assumptions about her background, and the skepticism of those who underestimated her intelligence became constant companions. Yet she did not retreat. Instead, she forged resilience from each challenge, refining her ability to remain calm under pressure, to listen carefully, and to respond with precision. Every setback became a lesson, every critique a sharpened tool for the battles to come. In her legal career, Crockett built a reputation for unwavering dedication. She fought cases that others deemed unwinnable, representing individuals and communities with integrity and courage. Victories weren't just about the courtroom. They were about affirming the dignity of those who had been dismissed or ignored. From landmark civil rights cases to defending the rights of working-class families, her record spoke not of ambition, but of steadfast service. Her opponents often underestimated her, expecting anger, theatrics, or panic under pressure. What they encountered instead was meticulous preparation, a mind attuned to nuance, and a voice that could convey authority without aggression. Politics, too, tested her resolve. Crockett entered arenas rife with partisanship, where reputation and perception often mattered more than substance. She faced opponents who wielded misinformation as a weapon, who attempted to twist facts and provoke emotional reactions to unsettle her. Yet Crockett consistently maintained her composure, transforming attacks into opportunities to educate, to clarify, and to stand firm on principles of justice and equality. Every public debate, every televised hearing, every committee meeting became a stage to demonstrate that dignity and intellect could prevail over noise and theatrics. Her moral courage extended beyond personal ambition. Crockett often spoke out when silence would have been easier, defending the rights of immigrants, marginalized communities, and those whose voices had been silenced. She leveraged her platform not for self-promotion, but for public service, balancing fierce advocacy with measured diplomacy. Colleagues describe her as someone who listens first, evaluates every angle, and responds with clarity that demands respect, even from adversaries. It is this blend of empathy and intellect that set her apart. She was not only prepared for confrontation, she was uniquely equipped to turn it into an advantage. Crockett's path was not without adversity. Early in her career, she faced political attacks designed to question her competence, her integrity, and even her identity. Rumors, insinuations, and blatant attempts to undermine her credibility tested her resolve. Many would have buckled under such pressure, but Crockett's response was methodical. She met misinformation with evidence, hostility with composure, and skepticism with clear communication. Each encounter strengthened her capacity to navigate complexity without losing sight of her principles. Each challenge honed her ability to read opponents, anticipate their strategies, and respond in ways that not only defended her position, but elevated the discourse. By the time she faced Kash Patel's accusation, Crockett had become a master of measured confrontation. She carried with her the cumulative experience of decades' legal battles, political debates, personal struggles, and victories both public and quiet. She understood that truth was not a blunt instrument. It was a precision tool, capable of dismantling misinformation and arrogance alike. Her calm wasn't passivity. It was strategy. Her silence wasn't hesitation. It was preparation. She was ready, in every sense, to meet Patel's aggression with a force that was invisible until it struck, and devastating when it did. Every detail of her life, from the neighborhoods she grew up in to the cases she won, contributed to the moment now unfolding. She was not simply reacting to an accusation. She was stepping into a role she had been training for her entire life. Observers might see only the poised figure at the podium, the measured tone, the steady gaze, but beneath it lay decades of resilience, intellect, and unwavering commitment to justice. This wasn't luck. This wasn't chance. This was preparedness born of experience, courage tempered by wisdom, and a moral compass unshaken by intimidation. And as the room held its breath, waiting for her reply to Patel's sharp accusations, there was an unspoken understanding among those watching. Jasmine Crockett was about to demonstrate precisely why her reputation for composure, clarity, and moral courage was not only earned, but essential. Every eye in that chamber, every camera lens, every social media feed, and every citizen attuned to justice was about to witness a display of mastery that few had seen before. Patel's theatrics were loud, but Crockett's response when it came promised to be unforgettable. Patel's eyes narrowed, the glint of calculated aggression sharpening with each word. "Congresswoman Crockett," he began, voice cutting through the chamber like a whip. "Your handling of these cases is not just questionable. It's a deliberate twisting of the law." The words reverberated, bouncing off polished wood and marble, filling every corner of the room. Every journalist raised a pen or phone. Every camera lens honed in as if the very air carried a secret no one could afford to miss. The room shifted, as if responding to a sudden current. A low murmur ran through aides and staffers, some leaning forward, some recoiling, trying to process the full weight of Patel's attack. His hands punctuated every accusation, pointing, gesturing, emphasizing, performing with the precision of a conductor orchestrating outrage. Micro-expressions betrayed him, though. A flicker of frustration passed across his face as he noticed that Crockett's eyes never wavered. Her posture never faltered. She sat like a rock in a storm, her calm and almost tangible force pressing against his chaos. Patel raised the stakes further, now layering innuendo atop accusation. "The statutes are clear," he insisted. "But your interpretations, your selective readings have misled the public and endangered trust in our institutions. How can the American people have faith in a system when its laws are bent for political theater?" Each syllable landed with the force of intent, designed to provoke gasps, to force reactions to dominate the room. And for a moment it seemed to work. Some journalists shifted uneasily. Some aides scribbled frantic notes, and the tension in the air grew dense enough to choke on. Yet Crockett's composure remained unbroken. Her fingers lightly tapped the edge of the podium, a subtle rhythm almost unnoticed but signaling her readiness. Her eyes scanned Patel, not with fear or anger, but with measured attention, as though cataloging every argument, every overreach, every hint of desperation. The contrast was stark, his energy explosive and performative, hers controlled and deliberate. The cameras, capturing every movement, lingered on the quiet intensity of her face, catching the subtle tightening of her jaw, the slight lift of her brow. The audience watching, both in the chamber and across the nation, could sense the imbalance, the loudness of accusation versus the quiet weight of truth. Patel's voice escalated, now bordering on a shout, as if volume alone could coerce a reaction. You claim to represent justice, yet you manipulate precedent to serve your own agenda. This isn't law, it's theater, and the public sees through it. His words hit the room like a drumbeat, forcing audible gasps, nervous rustling, the scrape of chairs. Observers leaned forward instinctively, sensing that history was unfolding in real time. Every camera angle captured the sharp tension between them, the aggressor seeking to dominate, the hero poised to transform pressure into power. Time seemed to dilate. The audience felt the weight of the moment. The world was holding its breath. Patel expected a response, a crack in the armor, a flinch, an uncontrolled word to seize upon. But Crockett's silence stretched, deliberate, almost cinematic. Every micro-expression, every subtle glance became amplified in the charged atmosphere. Journalists whispered into microphones, aides exchanged tense looks, and social media feeds pulsed with speculation, comments multiplying by the second, and then, in the charged pause, the room seemed to hinge on a single question, unspoken but felt by everyone present. Would Crockett respond or remain silent? The anticipation was electric, a tangible thread tying together every observer's attention, every camera's focus, every heart caught in suspense. Patel's confidence, though formidable, began to tremble under the weight of stillness, under the looming presence of someone who did not simply react but calculated, who did not merely defend but prepared to strike with precision. The chamber, the audience, the cameras, all were suspended in a moment that demanded resolution. Every eye, every mind, every pulse awaited the inevitable counter that could either shatter or uphold the balance of authority, trust, and moral clarity. And in that silence, one truth became clear. This was no ordinary debate. This was a confrontation where composure itself was a weapon, and the outcome would resonate far beyond the walls of the room. The room waited. Would Crockett respond or remain silent? The room held its breath. Crockett finally leaned forward, her hands resting lightly on the podium, voice low but commanding. "Mr. Patel," she began, measured, deliberate, "your characterization of my work is inaccurate." The pause that followed was deliberate, almost a beat too long, and the effect was immediate. Journalists leaned closer. Cameras zoomed, aides froze mid-note-taking. The tension hung thick, every ear straining for the words that were about to redefine the narrative. She continued, her tone calm, authoritative, and almost surgical. "I have never twisted the law. What I have done is interpret it with fidelity to precedent, clarity to the public, and fidelity to the principles this nation demands of its leaders." The precision of her language cut through Patel's theatrics like a scalpel. Every word carried weight, deliberate in cadence, each phrase layered with evidence she had compiled, prepared for moments exactly like this. Patel's eyes flickered. For the first time, the confidence that had fueled his accusations showed cracks. His mouth opened, then closed, as if searching for a retort, but Crockett wasn't finished. "Let us examine the facts," she said, voice steady, almost soothing. "Case after case, I have relied on established statutory interpretations. Every action I have taken aligns with the letter and spirit of the law. Attempts to paint it otherwise are misrepresentations." She leaned slightly forward, letting the words land, letting them resonate. The cameras caught it, the calm, measured certainty of a woman who had mastered the arena of both law and public scrutiny. Gasps began to ripple through the room. Not dramatic, performative gasps, but subtle, whispered acknowledgments of surprise and admiration. Analysts in the back murmured, journalists scribbled, and a faint shiver of anticipation traveled through the chamber. Crockett paused, letting the silence expand, magnifying the contrast between her composed authority and Patel's fraying facade. The quiet became deafening. Her dignity wasn't just visible, it was palpable, almost electric, forcing attention without aggression, demanding acknowledgement without spectacle. She turned to reference precedent, weaving citations into her argument with effortless skill. In Smith v. State, the court affirmed that statutory interpretation must prioritize the intended effect of the legislation, not hypothetical political agendas. In Anderson v. County, clarity and consistency were emphasized above all. Each reference, each legal precedent, was a carefully placed brick in a wall that Patel had assumed he could crumble with rhetoric. And with every citation, his posture stiffened, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. The words were not just rebuttals. They were a display of preparation, intellect, and moral authority combined. Crockett's rhythm was deliberate. She alternated between slow exposition and punctuated emphasis, her voice rising subtly only to make critical points land harder. "You claim manipulation, Mr. Patel," she said, eyes locking onto his with quiet intensity. "But facts do not bend to assertion. The law does not bend to theatrics, and the public sees when arguments rely on insinuation rather than evidence." The tension in the chamber escalated with each word. Her calm was a force field, dismantling aggression without a single shout, dismantling intimidation without retaliation. The audience, both present and imagined across social media, felt the shift. Tweets began to circulate almost instinctively. Crockett just dismantled Patel in one sentence. The composure, the clarity, unbelievable. Even political commentators primed for division paused mid-analysis, acknowledging the precision and moral authority she projected. A quiet ripple spread through the chamber, as if the very air recognized the magnitude of what was unfolding. Patel's theatrics, which had once dominated the narrative, now seemed like hollow echoes against her measured presence. And then came the crescendo, the strategic reveal. Crockett drew upon evidence Patel had not anticipated would be invoked in real time. Documents, precedents, and public statements were referenced with exacting detail, highlighting inconsistencies in his accusations. "Your claim hinges on selective interpretation," she said, eyes never leaving his. "But the full record demonstrates consistency, legality, and adherence to ethical obligations. Attempts to distort these facts are transparent, and they fail under scrutiny." The words landed with precision, like a judge's gavel striking finality. Patel's confidence visibly crumbled, a slight twitch in his jaw, a shifting in his stance, the tightening of his grip on note small human signs of mounting panic. Every observer could see it. The aggressive posture that had carried him through countless confrontations was unraveling under the weight of truth delivered with dignity. Crockett's brilliance was not in volume. It was in control, in timing, in moral clarity. She didn't need to shout, to interrupt, or to dominate. Her composure made Patel's aggression look reckless, his theatrics petty, and his accusations empty. Crockett allowed another pause, letting the reality of her words sink in. Whispered commentary filled the room. "Did you hear that citation?" Every argument dismantled. "She's untouchable." Cameras lingered on Patel as he opened his mouth to respond and closed it again, the weight of her words pressing down on him. Even the aides and journalists, trained to maintain neutrality, seemed caught in the magnetic pull of her authority. Social media, already ignited, became a wildfire. Hashtags, video clips, and analysis spread at a velocity that no one could contain. And then, she delivered the final, mic-drop statement, a line that encapsulated the entire confrontation with poetic clarity. "Truth is not performative, Mr. Patel. It does not yield to theatrics. Justice does not bend to volume. And those of us who dedicate our lives to the law, we will always respond with clarity, integrity, and conviction." The room fell silent, not because she had finished speaking, but because the resonance of her words lingered, imprinting itself on every mind present. Patel, for all his aggression, was left grasping at shadows, his confidence dismantled not by ridicule but by the quiet, devastating power of truth. Every reaction, every gasp, every whispered acknowledgement contributed to the sensation of witnessing history in real time. Journalists framed it, commentators amplified it, Social media made it viral. Crockett had not merely defended herself, she had redefined the narrative, proving that composure and intellect could dismantle arrogance and spectacle in ways the world rarely witnessed. Her dignity, her command of facts, and her unshakable moral clarity had achieved what no loud accusation could: complete narrative dominance. And as Patel slumped slightly, defeated but still trying to salvage pride, the room collectively realized that this was more than a rebuttal. This was a lesson in integrity, a demonstration that truth delivered with precision and calm authority carries a force far greater than anger or volume ever could. The audience, the cameras, and the nation beyond those walls all understood it. Crockett's mic drop moment had transformed a confrontation into a masterclass in moral and intellectual power, leaving an indelible mark that would be remembered long after the echoes of Patel's accusations had faded. From the courtroom to living rooms across the nation, one moment echoed louder than any shout. Crockett's measured mic drop response to Patel's accusation reverberated far beyond the polished walls of that chamber. Social media erupted instantly. Hashtags surged. More Crockett clarity, more truth over theatrics, more mic drop moment. Memes appeared almost before the echoes of her words had faded, pairing images of Patel's crumbling confidence with captions that celebrated her composure. Every clip, every screenshot, every 15-second loop was shared thousands, then millions of times, as viewers collectively marveled at the stark contrast between the two figures. Analysts scrambled to dissect the confrontation. Political talk shows devoted entire segments to replaying her words, breaking down the legal precedents she cited, and marveling at the precision of her delivery. Pundits who normally criticized opposing figures paused, recognizing the undeniable force of Crockett's approach. "This is how you dismantle an accusation without ever raising your voice," one commentator remarked. "It's not aggression, it's intellect, clarity, and preparation." Even across partisan lines, there was acknowledgement that what had just happened was more than political theater. It was a masterclass in poise and strategy. Meanwhile, ordinary viewers didn't need a deep knowledge of law to understand the significance. Across kitchens, living rooms, and offices, people paused their routines, captivated. Tweets and posts were shared with captions like, "If you needed proof that composure wins, watch this. I've never seen someone own a room with calm like that. The law isn't just about rules, it's about integrity," and Crockett proved it. The validation wasn't abstract. It was immediate, visceral, and contagious. Those who identified with her struggles, her values, and her identity felt a surge of pride, a sense that someone in the arena was fighting with honor, intellect, and courage. News outlets picked up the story, emphasizing both the drama and the substance. Headlines ranged from the sensational "Crockett destroys Patel in courtroom showdown" to the analytical "How Crockett's strategic calm reframed the debate on law and trust." Op-eds explored the implications, the importance of integrity in public service, the dangers of weaponizing accusations for political gain, and the rare spectacle of moral authority prevailing in a polarized environment. Social discourse was alive with discussion, commentary, and reflection. People debated not only who had won the exchange, but what it meant for the culture of politics, for public trust, and for the standards to which leaders should be held. Even celebrities and influencers joined the conversation, amplifying Crockett's response to audiences that far exceeded the chamber. Video clips went viral, threaded with personal commentary and admiration. "This is why calm intelligence beats theatrics every time," wrote one prominent figure. "Integrity is louder than shouting." Every share, retweet, and post added weight, turning what could have been a brief moment into a nationwide cultural phenomenon. The ripple effects were immediate. Teachers referenced it in classrooms, community leaders cited it in forums, and ordinary citizens used it as an example of how truth, preparation, and dignity could hold power over noise. The emotional resonance was palpable. For immigrant families, for marginalized communities, for anyone who had ever faced disproportionate scrutiny or misrepresentation, Crockett's performance felt like validation. She didn't just defend herself, she elevated those who often felt unseen, unheard, and underestimated. The public response carried an almost tangible sense of vindication, collective pride, and hope that integrity could still triumph in spaces dominated by theatrics and aggression. Even in political circles, the aftershocks were impossible to ignore. Patel's allies scrambled to reframe the narrative, while his critics highlighted the fragility of performance-based attacks in the face of truth delivered with composure. Campaign strategists, media consultants, and legal analysts pored over the video, dissecting every moment for lessons, implications, and mistakes. Across political and social spectrums, the takeaway was consistent. Crockett's response was more than a rebuttal. It was a statement about what leadership, preparation, and moral courage could achieve. By the end of the day, the moment had taken on a life of its own. It was replayed, analyzed, and shared in ways Patel could never have anticipated. Social media trends persisted for hours, then days, with hashtags continuing to climb, echoing in forums, comment sections, and group chats. Conversations shifted. People debated not only the content of the law, but the importance of character, dignity, and strategic calm in public life. The spectacle had become a lesson, and the lesson was clear. Truth delivered with integrity resonates far louder than volume or bluster ever could. From the courtroom to the far corners of the country, one moment had transcended politics. Crockett's reply, precise and unassailable, had reshaped the discourse, forced a nation to reconsider its expectations of public figures, and left a villainized opponent struggling to reclaim a narrative that was no longer his to control. And as audiences everywhere reflected, shared, and debated, one truth became undeniable. This was a defining moment, one that would be remembered not for aggression, but for courage, clarity, and the quiet, unstoppable power of integrity. In the quiet aftermath of the confrontation, the room seemed to exhale collectively. Patel's accusations had been loud, aggressive, designed to dominate, yet Crockett's response had transformed the clash into a testament of something far greater than politics. It was a lesson in integrity, in patience, and in the quiet, unyielding force of truth. What unfolded in that courtroom was not merely a legal exchange. It was a narrative about the kind of society we choose to uphold, the values we place above noise, and the power of composure in the face of aggression. Crockett reframed the moment not as a personal victory, but as a demonstration of principle. She showed that dignity is not measured by volume, that authority is not claimed through spectacle, and that leadership is not performance, it is responsibility. Every calculated pause, every citation of precedent, every measured word had conveyed a message far beyond the walls of the chamber, that truth and moral courage are far more impactful than bluster or intimidation. For viewers across the nation, the lesson was immediate and inspiring. When confronted with misrepresentation or aggression, it is integrity, clarity, and commitment to principle that triumphs. Her example resonated deeply with communities who had felt marginalized or silenced. Immigrant families, activists, students, and everyday citizens saw in her conduct a mirror of the qualities they valued: resilience in adversity, careful thought under pressure, and the courage to act without compromising ethics. Crockett's calm authority became a model for empowerment, showing that one voice armed with knowledge, preparation, and moral clarity can confront not just individual attacks, but the broader culture of intimidation and distortion. She had turned an attempt to delegitimize her work into a moment of national reflection, one that inspired admiration, conversation, and action. The crescendo of this moment wasn't found in applause or headlines, it was found in the realization that character matters. Across social media, conversations shifted from partisan argument to recognition of leadership defined by principle. Teachers referenced her poise as an example in classrooms, leaders cited it in community forums, and citizens shared it as a personal lesson in how to navigate challenges with integrity. Crockett had shown that public service, grounded in truth and dignity, has the power to influence not only policy but culture, conversation, and societal expectations. And in that realization lies the universal truth she demonstrated. Aggression, theatrics, and misrepresentation can be loud and attention-grabbing, but they are ultimately fleeting. Truth, composure, and service endure. They shape perception, earn respect, and inspire others to act with courage in their own lives. The narrative of that day reinforced the idea that each of us, regardless of our background or position, has the ability to respond to adversity with integrity, to resist the allure of spectacle, and to elevate values above ego. For viewers, the takeaway was clear. Do not be seduced by bluster, do not be intimidated by forceful assertion, and do not measure success by volume or theatrics. Instead, value preparation over improvisation, principle over provocation, and courage over performative aggression. Crockett's conduct was a vivid demonstration that the highest form of power lies not in domination, but in the ability to stand firm with clarity, empathy, and unwavering ethical commitment. As the nation reflected on the confrontation, a broader moral resonance emerged. This wasn't just a legal victory. It was a reminder of the standards we should hold for ourselves, for our leaders, and for the institutions that shape public life. It was an invitation to embrace dignity over outrage, to pursue truth over manipulation, and to champion service over self-interest. Crockett had taken an aggressive, divisive moment and transformed it into a teaching moment for the country, leaving a lasting impression that transcended politics and touched the core of shared values. And in that echo of principle and moral clarity, audiences everywhere felt empowered not just to witness but to emulate, to act in their communities with courage, to confront falsehood with calm authority, and to choose dignity over spectacle. In her triumph, the nation glimpsed a truth too often forgotten, that integrity, preparation, and moral courage will always outlast aggression and misrepresentation, shaping not only outcomes but the character of society itself. The moment had passed, but its impact lingered. Crockett's reply had destroyed Patel, not through anger, not through theatrics, but through the unassailable force of truth. In a world often dominated by bluster and spectacle, she reminded the nation that clarity, preparation, and integrity hold far greater power than volume or intimidation ever could. Every observer, from journalists to citizens scrolling their feeds, had witnessed a masterclass in moral courage and strategic composure, and the story didn't end in the courtroom. It lives on in every conversation sparked, every hashtag shared, every clip replayed, and every debate reframed by her example. Because moments like these are not just headlines, they are lessons, inspirations, and calls to action. They show what is possible when one stands firm in principle, when dignity is wielded as a tool of influence, and when truth is given the space to speak louder than aggression ever could. This is your invitation to be part of the conversation. Share this moment, comment on the brilliance, the composure, the courage. Discuss it with friends, colleagues, and communities. Let the lesson spread that leadership, integrity, and truth are not abstract ideals. They are forces that shape outcomes, inspire change, and redefine narratives. Because brilliance deserves to be witnessed. Because courage under fire deserves recognition. And because justice and truth are always worth defending, no matter how loud the opposition. Let this moment remind us all that, even in the face of aggression and misrepresentation, the power of integrity can and will prevail.